Hello, I'm Jorge Gestoso. Welcome to a new program. On today's show, what someone who was almost deported as a teen think about the immigration crisis and deportations? We ask our guest, Liana Montecinos, attorney and founder of United for Social Justice, a nonprofit organization devoted to help youth access to higher education. Liana Montecinos, a warm welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Liana, what do you think about the conditions that are being put our migrants in those detention centers in the border with Mexico?
I think the conditions are harsh, they're inhuman, and they're crimes against humanity.
And in the case of President Trump, he says, for example, migrants were living far better in Border Patrol detention centers than in their home countries. And Rush Limbaugh, that is a radio host and extreme right and a golf partner of President Trump, has said lately that drinking toilet water is a step up for migrants. Your reaction?
I think that it's a clear demonstration of how they are detached from humanity and how they are dehumanizing asylum seekers, refugees, or migrants. And I think it's a reflection of how evil this administration is.
And in the case of comments of President Trump, he said exactly, he tells migrants not to come if they don't like the conditions.
I think that's a reflection of his own ignorance. The United States has to abide by international and national asylum laws. And our asylum laws indicate that if someone has suffered persecution or if someone has a well-founded fear of suffering persecution on account of 5 protected grounds, which is race, nationality, political opinion, religion, and membership in a particular social group, that person is entitled to apply to asylum in the United States. The president and the leader of this great nation should know these laws and should be the one to carry them on and offer them, especially to the most vulnerable in the world. We're talking about the president of the wealthiest nation of nations. His lack of leadership and the way he's treating the most vulnerable really shows you how evil he is and how inhumanely these people are being treated.
On June the 30th, the New York Times published an article under the title of "Why Should Migrants Respect Our Borders?" Said, the West never respected theirs. And the article continues and said, immigration quotas should be based on how much the host country has ruined other countries, and adds, Guatemalans and Honduras are suffering that the U.S. peddles them guns and buys their drugs. And the article concludes, they say, they're coming here because we were there. Is that the reason why you were coming by foot from Honduras when you were 11 years old?
I think the United States does not have clean hands in this matter. The United States has been involved in the destabilization of the political system in Central America, placing dictators that benefited the United States capitalist interests. The United States has been involved from the beginning, so most definitely the United States has caused or has had a really powerful impact on what is happening right now in Central America and what is driving people to leave. The violence that people face every day, they don't know whether they're going to come back to their homes alive. And so the United States is definitely historically very much involved in everything that's happening.
You and I, we live here and we watch the media. The way that they're trying to present the situation, this crisis, is looking at the frame and not looking at the film. They choose a frame to describe the situation. And the frame that they choose is the migrant at the moment that are crossing the borders. But most definitely, there's an issue here about the media. And there is that well-known and civil rights activist Malcolm X say, the media is the most potent or most powerful entity in the world, he says, because it can make the guilty innocent and the innocent guilty, and that's power because it manipulates the minds of the masses. How come an American could believe that the situation with the migrants starts at the border and they're not absolutely aware, or they don't want to know, or they are ignorant by choice, that the U.S., in many, many cases, as you said, is the country that is creating the conditions for those migrants to come.
I think this touches on a crisis that the United States faces on its history and how its history is told. For one, I went to a historically black law school, and I did not become aware on a lot of things that this country committed against African Americans until I went to UDC law. And so I think it's part of the narrative that this country has created through its own citizens, but it's also a lack of proactiveness of the people, some of the people in the United States who don't want to go back in history and understand the role that the United States has played in Central America, Latin America overall. And so I think it's a cultural problem within the United States. But I think it takes and I urge the United States citizens to educate themselves on the involvement that the United States has had in all of the crimes against humanity that the United States is guilty of, to understand the present. You can't really understand the present unless you go back in history and see all of the atrocious things the United States has committed.
What do you think about the policy of zero tolerance and family separations?
I think it's evil, and I think it's inhumane, and I think it's a crime against humanity. The policy of zero tolerance criminalizes asylum seekers, and we have international and national asylum laws that allow for people to apply for asylum while they present themselves to our borders. And what the zero tolerance policy does is that it puts them in prolonged detention. It puts them through hieleras or ice boxes. There have been children who have died because of the severe cold conditions. This is evil. There is no other explanation for this. I really don't understand it from a political point of view. I don't understand it from a humane point of view. Why do we do this? And this is obviously an abuse of power that must be stopped.
You came when you were 11 by foot from Honduras. And you finally got political asylum. Tell us quickly, why did you come and what happened from that moment that you left your country up to today?
My grandmother had passed away in Honduras. There was no one to take care of me, and my life wasn't safe. And so my sister and I embarked on this treacherous journey through Guatemala, Honduras, and Mexico. We were lucky that many things that happened to other minors did not happen to us, such as being gang raped or being mutilated by La Bestia, which is, the literal translation is the beast, which is the train where the poorest of the immigrants ride on top because they don't have the money to pay the coyotes. And the reason I came was because home was not safe. And there is a poem that says, nobody leaves home unless home is the mouth of a shark. And that's literally what happened in my case and what's happening again and again decades after. And
there is the Washington Post published an article on you. It was titled, "She was almost deported as a teen. Now she helps frightened versions of herself." What do you feel just regarding the threat of being deported? How much was affecting your life?
It has affected my life in every single aspect. Being undocumented affects a person in their ability to drive, their ability to work, the places they can enter into, even going to college. I had to pay triple the tuition to be able to afford my college education. I was lucky enough that I received scholarships, but I worked 3 jobs. And now I've been a U.S. citizen for about 3 years, but hearing the president saying that he's going to deport masses still creates anxiety attacks in me. I can only imagine the terror that the families feel. I mean, this is playing with people's lives. It means family separations. It means going to a country that is back home, that is stable, that is not welcoming the immigrants. It's truly an issue that I don't think it's being looked in the right way, and by him just creating panic, it's purely evil.
And he's announcing massive deportations.
That is correct. He has announced massive deportations. I don't think he understands the gravity of this issue, because in every undocumented household there is a U.S. citizen, whether it is a child, a spouse. People have, and we're seeing this more and more and more, mixed status houses. He is affecting the lives of U.S. citizens.
And you were coming, you were studying, so basically you are a dreamer, what they call it, a dreamer in the U.S. And what do you think that is going to be the future of the dreamers that is being discussed in terms of Congress and the presidency?
I hope that the future of the dreamers has more a concrete definition, because the dreamers have been played by different political agendas, and nothing concrete has come out of it except for DACA. In DACA, it's still in the limbo. So I hope that our leaders take a firm stand and do the right thing, that they provide a pathway to citizenship to the dreamers who have done nothing but contribute to the greatness of this nation.
How many people are we talking about, like dreamers?
We're talking about 800,000 DACA beneficiaries, and those are just the DACA beneficiaries. That doesn't include the people who were not eligible for DACA, who were over the age of 30 or who were younger than 15 when DACA came about, because right now no initial applications are being accepted. So we're talking about a lot more people.
And you believe that all this crisis regarding immigration, political purposes for President Trump to try to get reelected?
Oh, most definitely. He has a group of followers that we have seen through his election who thrive on hate, who thrive on division, and who are racist. And so by him demonizing brown immigrants, they flourish in that. And so I think he wants to keep them content. He wants to keep them alive so that this rhetoric of hatred continues. But what he doesn't know is that, as many of my colleagues, is that love always trumps hate.
You were coming here, you were being educated, you were studying, you became a lawyer. How important is education for everyone, including the migrants who come to this country and not necessarily very well educated?
Education is everything. When I was a little girl, we were very poor back home, and my great-grandmother would always say to me, they can take everything away from you, because we were abused by the military, the police, different men back home. And she said, they can take everything away from you, but not your education. And so I had nothing, and I embraced this thing that my great-grandmother said that I could have. And I brought that idea with me to the United States. And I can tell you that it's everything, because it liberated me from the chains of poverty. It gave me a voice in society. And that's why I have devoted my life through my nonprofit to help first-generation students access higher education, because I think it gives them an opportunity to have a voice in society and find more than a job.
You were and you are working in a law firm, and a law firm that helped you to get the political asylum, and you have chosen not to be specialized, if you want, in corporate law, that you can make a lot of money, or a lot of people makes a lot of money. You have chosen perform on immigration law to help other migrants?
Yes, and the reason being is because I have been very blessed. I am one of the very few undocumented immigrants who has had the opportunity to normalize my immigration status. And I have had the opportunity to go to college through scholarships and also working 3 jobs. I've had the opportunity to go to law school, pass the bar. So I'm very blessed, and I want to return that. And I've also suffered through a lot of injustices, and this work really helps me heal.
And in the case of your contact with migrants, you were talking to them, for example, in Tijuana?
Yes, in December, I took a trip to Tijuana to help refugees there with 13 colleagues from UDC Law, and we were able to firsthand provide legal services to the refugees there.
And what was sort of the atmosphere, the sense that you got there?
I saw a lot of things that continue to hurt me very deeply. I can tell you that my year has not been the same. I saw people sleeping in their own feces. We were supposed to be asking people and screen them to see if they were eligible for asylum. And there was a lady whose leg was about to be amputated, but she didn't have the medical resources. And I paused for a moment and I said, how can I continue asking this lady about what happened, the tragedies that happened to her back home when she is in so much pain? I mean, and I saw it time and time again with the children and with all of the migrants, the refugees, that were there.
Do you think that immigration is in the middle of the political battle from elections in next year. I mean, we are seeing most of the candidates, we're talking at least 25 on the Democratic Party, that are discussing immigration. Is it a real thing in this country, the discussion about immigration?
I think it is, and it has been, it wasn't at the beginning. If we go back to history in the United States, I mean, immigration laws started after the Chinese and the Japanese and the African Americans wanted status here. So as we start historically, now immigration has become a hot topic, especially because the brown folks from Latin America want to come by. So it's definitely an immigration issue, but it's tied with race, and that's important to understand, especially in the United States.
We're seeing that, for example, Mexico looks like it's changed its policy, and now they're trying to close the south border with Guatemala. And Guatemala seems that it's being twisted its arm and is trying to close its border to Honduras and so on and so forth. Have you seen that sort of perception that this is going on?
Unfortunately, the United States has such a massive influence in all of the countries in Latin America, especially Mexico. And for years, the United States has been paying Mexico for every Central American person they deport, because they don't want Central Americans to be able to cross through Mexico and come into the United States. And so we have seen that the Mexican government was given a pushback on that, but Mexico has collaborated with the United States in stopping asylum seekers from Central America into coming to the United States. And here's the thing, we are being forced to fight against each other. And although these are political discussions, the real victims here are the asylum seekers who cannot stay within the boundaries of their countries, and they're being forced to do so, which I think it's a violation of international laws.
Do you think there is going to be someday an immigration reform with a path to citizenship for at least 11 million undocumented people who live in the U.S.?
I hope so. I hope so, because it's the right thing. Immigrants, undocumented immigrants, contribute to the United States economy in a massive way. I mean, there are studies that prove that undocumented immigrants and immigrants overall are just contribute to our labor force, are in our families, our communities. And so why not? I think we need to create a system in which we promote the people who are doing good in the United States, and that's definitely the immigrant community.
President Trump, for example, is mentioning that immigrants is creating, if you want, a security threat in the country. The national security is at risk because of these immigrants. Shouldn't be the first step to legalize the undocumented immigrants, to know who they are, where they are, and get to know? Because if national security is to have 11 million people and you don't know where they are and who they are, why don't you start, rather than to close the border, to legalize the 11 million?
No, and I think what you're saying, it's very logical. In the 11 million undocumented immigrants are under the shadows because we won't allow them to step out of the shadows. We won't allow them to have driver's licenses to be able to work. But if we were to give them the opportunity, just like we did with DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, people come forward. They yearn for the opportunity to be part of the American society, to be able to work, to be able to drive, to be able to go to school. So I don't think people are hiding because they're criminals. They're hiding because we're forcing them. And given the opportunity, they will come out and become good contributors of American society.
Do you feel yourself as an example?
It's hard to say that because I've met so many immigrants who do so much more than me, but I hope that I can be seen as an immigrant who has embraced the blessings that the United States has offered me, and who is critical of its politics and who wants to do right, especially by the most vulnerable communities.
What are your future plans?
Well, my future plans are to continue advocating for the most vulnerable undocumented immigrants, and that includes the children who are being separated from their parents, unaccompanied minors, and also the families that are fleeing persecution. And I also hope not just to help immigrants be able to have a safe life and a stable life in the United States, but also to target the problem from its root in Latin America, to be able to make a change. And I know that that's ambitious, and maybe I won't be able to do that, but I hope that I can help people stay home, because nobody wants to come to a country where they're going to be discriminated, where they're going to be labeled as illegals. I know that I didn't, but I had to, and now this is home. So I hope that I can help people stay home, and if they cannot stay home, that I can help them relocate safely.
Liana Montecinos, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.